Valentine's night was one of the worst nights for me as a server at a local restaurant. Every year, we'd get our fair share of dramatic couples, but one couple in particular left an impression I'll never forget. The pair seemed to be in their late 20s. I greeted them and handed them the Valentine's special menu. The man decided on his order almost immediately, but the woman took her time. About 15 minutes later, they flagged me down to place their order. As I approached the table, I noticed the man looked increasingly irritated, fidgeting with his fork. The woman, on the other hand, smiled at me as if everything was fine. Just as I began taking their order, the man's face turned red with frustration. Suddenly, he announced they were leaving. The woman, clearly caught off guard, asked him why. His response was curt and sharp. She had taken too long to decide, and he no longer wanted to have dinner. Without waiting for her reaction, he stood up and walked out of the restaurant, leaving her sitting there in stunned silence. The woman began to cry softly, and my heart went out to her. I brought her a glass of lemon water and told her she could take her time to collect herself. I also offered to prepare her meal to go or serve it if she still wanted to eat. She thanked me but said it would be best if she left. After she departed, I went to clear their table and noticed something strange. There were red stains on the chair where the man had been sitting. Concerned, I informed my manager. He had the chair removed from the dining area and instructed another staff member to sanitize it thoroughly. A week later, the local news reported a body found at a nearby park. When they showed the photo of the victim, I froze. It was the man from that Valentine's night. As more details emerged, we learned the woman who dined with him that night had murdered him and fled to another state. It's chilling to think how quickly things can escalate. A bad dinner might not turn someone into a murderer, but that Valentine's night will always stay with me. When my coworker suggested a blind date for Valentine's Day, I figured, why not? Worst case scenario, it'd be an awkward dinner and I'd have a story to laugh about later. I met her at a cozy little bistro, and when she walked in, I'll admit I was impressed. Lila was stunning, her smile warm and inviting. Dinner started off great. She was easy to talk to, and we bonded over favorite movies and embarrassing childhood stories. I couldn't believe my luck. She seemed perfect. After we finished eating, I suggested a walk in the nearby park, thinking it would be a nice way to wrap up the evening. At first, the walk was nice. The sunset cast everything in this soft, romantic glow. But then, I started noticing things. Lila's laughter, which had been charming at dinner, felt off. She laughed at everything I said, even when it wasn't remotely funny. And then there were the silences. We stopped near a fountain, and when I turned to say something, she was just standing there, staring at me. Her wide, unblinking eyes locked onto mine, and for a second I felt like prey. I cracked a joke to lighten the mood, but she didn't respond. She just kept staring, her smile frozen in place. The rest of the walk was awkward. I tried to keep the conversation going, but her responses became strange, almost cryptic. Right before we said goodbye, she grabbed my hand and said, "I'd really like to see you again." Her voice was sweet, but something about her intensity sent a shiver down my spine. Still, I brushed it off. Maybe I was overthinking. I agreed to another date. Over the next few days, we started talking on the phone. At first it was fine, but then the questions began. She wanted to know everything. My daily routine, my family, my co-workers. Her interest felt intrusive, and I started to pull back. That's when things got weird. She showed up at my work unannounced, claiming she was just in the area. Then came the gifts. A creepy, one-eyed teddy bear, a locket with her picture in it, and finally, a box of chocolates with no return address. The last straw came after I got back from a weekend trip with my friends. The moment I opened the door to my apartment, I knew something was wrong. The smell of fresh paint hit me first. Inside, my place was unrecognizable. The walls were painted bright pink, my furniture had been rearranged, and every surface was covered with framed photos of Lila. On the largest wall in my living room, she'd made a giant collage of her face surrounded by red hearts. On the coffee table, there was a handwritten note. "My dearest Daniel, I've made this house our home. Even if you don't see me, I'll always be with you. Yours forever, Lila. I didn't even stop to think. I grabbed a bag, packed what I could, and left that night. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not my friends, not my coworkers. I quit my job, changed my number, and moved to a different city. She never contacted me again, but I can't shake the feeling that she's still out there watching. Every knock on my door, every unfamiliar face on the street, it all makes me jump. I'll never go on another blind date. Valentine's Day will always remind me of Lila and her manic laughter, her unsettling stares, and the promise she left behind, I'll always be with you. Valentine's night had been a madhouse. Couples packed every corner of the bar, sharing cheesy heart-shaped pizzas and overpriced cocktails with names like Cupid's Kiss **. By the time the last customers trickled out, I was exhausted. "All right, Jake, I'm heading to the back to check on the stock," my coworker Sam said, tossing his rag onto the counter. "Finish up out here, will you?" "Sure thing," I replied, stifling a yawn. The place was finally quiet. The neon lights buzzed faintly as I wiped down the counters and collected half-melted candles from the tables. Just as I reached for the mop, the front door creaked open. I looked up, expecting a straggler who hadn't realized we were closed. Instead, I saw her, a woman, stunningly beautiful, stepping into the bar as if she owned the place. She was dressed head to toe in vintage 1950s fashion. A red polka dot dress, black gloves, and curls pinned to perfection. "Sorry, Mom," I called out. "We're closed for the night." She didn't seem to hear me. Instead, she smiled and walked over to the bar, her heels clicking against the wood floor. "It's such a cold night," she said, her voice smooth and melodic. "One drink wouldn't hurt, would it?" I hesitated. Something about her presence was captivating, almost hypnotic. "All right," I said, grabbing a glass. "But just one. What'll it be?" "Whiskey? Neat," she said, settling onto a bar stool. As I poured the drink, I couldn't help but notice how out of place she looked. "So," I asked, sliding the glass over, "special occasion? Valentine's party?" She laughed lightly, shaking her head. "No, I always dress like this. It's just who I am. I live upstairs, so I thought I'd come down for a drink." I froze mid-wipe. "Upstairs?" "Yes," she said, tilting her head. "Why?" "Well, the apartments upstairs were converted into office space for the owner years ago," I explained. "No one lives there anymore." Her smile didn't waver. "Maybe you're mistaken." Before I could respond, she leaned forward, her dark eyes locking onto mine. "You work too hard, Jake," she said softly. "A man like you deserves to relax once in a while." Her words caught me off guard. "How do you know my name?" She just smiled, tapping her gloved fingers against the glass. "Hey, Jake." Sam's voice cut through the moment as he walked back into the room, wiping his hands on a towel. The toilets flooded in the back. Some genius thought it was a good idea to stuff paper towels in there. I turned to Sam, groaning. "Great, another mess." When I turned back to the bar, she was gone. Her glass sat untouched, the whiskey inside still undisturbed. "Where'd she go?" I asked, scanning the empty room. "Who?" Sam looked at me confused. "The woman, she was just here, sitting at the bar." Sam frowned. "Jake, I've been in the back this whole time, nobody else came in." "Anne, I think you need sleep," Sam said, shaking his head as he headed back to the kitchen. I glanced around the bar, then back at the glass. My reflection shimmered faintly in the untouched whiskey. By the time I locked up that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Needless to say, I took the next Valentine's night off.